Alex, when we study consciousness, we're looking for mechanisms of how it occurs. It's easiest in discussing it from a neurobiological standpoint, but it would occur to all other ideas and mechanisms. What I'm interested in is what are we using as data points or as pieces of knowledge or observation that we need to explain very specifically. We say consciousness, but that's a very broad term, doesn't mean anything. But what are we specifically looking for? For example, when we have a neurobiological or physicalist point of view, we're trying to explain the neural correlates of consciousness. So what are some of those data points? And then we'll go on to some others.
All right, well, there are two axes here, perhaps to discuss. One is how you would want to go from measurement to correlation to causation, and maybe if you have a theory, to understanding, right? That's a very important arrow that we, or even mountain that we all try to climb. Now, in another axis, we have the relevant data, as you're asking, and I would say, obviously, relevant data needs to be sought first in the brain, because the brain, and that sounds like a truism, but it's not. It's like the organ king of consciousness. And so the beginning of the neurobiology of consciousness was at this juncture between let's go and look at correlates in the brain. And there's a lot to be said about that. Now, but that's not enough because, of course, sometimes these correlates, even when you think you have causation, necessity and sufficiency, the idea of necessity and sufficiency in biology, many times doesn't mean that that particular gene or that particular circuit is necessary or sufficient. So it's a very tricky business. Of course, you get dependencies between brain and mind, attention and neural processes and so on, but it's not that straightforward. But that's not the end, because then you need to go beyond the brain, I would say, and some even materialistic disciplines emphasize the role of other organs and the flesh and the rest of the body. So here we see, and I smile because it's very interesting how you have res cogitans, which you place inside the head, and then you start to spread it like butter onto res extensa, and you say, sure, it's in the brain, but also it's the embodiment, and therefore the enactivists whose approach is very important here.
Enactivism is when the study of consciousness and the study of life itself is very interrelated. They're not two separate questions, but consciousness is related to the interaction, the embodiment, but the cross communication and the interaction with the environment is not just something that's casual. It's part of the fundamentals of the process.
Indeed, and therefore the organism environment dance. It's made of closed loops. So already the idea of linear causality, this is another interesting conceptual challenge. The idea of linear causality starts to break down because everything is in a mutuality or reciprocal relationship. And that's a very organic way of thinking about it. But I would say that's not even enough, because what are other relevant data for consciousness? Well, there's some phenomena that seem to go not only beyond brains and beyond bodies, but beyond the body and the brain, into the world in ways that we don't understand. They start to feel non-local. And here people become nervous because it's like, wait, don't bring this too quick. But if the question is this, if minds are extended, if there's an extended mind, do we mean this metaphorically, or do we mean it more literally, in the sense that, for instance, your mind and my mind now could be linked in a way that doesn't require necessarily that we send across mechanistic signals. And
when you're saying linked, you don't mean that we're simpatico, we have the same belief and we're friends and all of that. You mean something much deeper than that.
Yes.
There's a real mechanistic link, using the word mechanistic meaning a linkage, but not necessarily materialistic mechanistic.
Yes, that's difficult to unfold, but this idea of that perception can only be mediated through the senses, sense-set perception. But there are other ways to conceive perception where the carriers need not be substances colliding on each other, this is what materialism is in a way, is there are these bits, this kind of stuff that's simply located, as Alfred North Whitehead would put it, and the only way they can talk to one another is by direct physical contact.
Even
That's
if they're
mechanism.
quantum fields, it's the same thing. Quantum fields interact. The quantum field of an electron and the quantum field of a proton would interact, even though they're quantum fields, the same interaction.
Yes, yes. So you see we have the two axes. The one that forces us to think very carefully about correlation, causation, circular causation, and theories that go beyond that. And the other one, which is from the brain, of course, let's continue poking at the brain, but the body is constitutive. That's what the enactivist would say, and I agree with that. It's not just a tretzo. It's constitutive in cognition and consciousness. The world is the same thing. The context is constitutive, and beyond. Even in an entangled way, the idea that because if the universe is not made just of matter, if it's also made of minds, well, those minds could be related in ways that we cannot think very clearly as of today.
And that may not be limited by the physics of space and time.
Yes, and that's the concept of non-locality in a way. And that's about consciousness, but also about
quantum.
And I was going to say perception and memory. Can we think of perception as not bounded in space? And can we think of memory as not bounded in time? Meaning that, as Henri Bergson would say, that our memories are not stored in the brain, but they're stored in time. Time being really a different thing than space.
Yeah, these are very radically different ways of looking at it. But I think what we're saying is that the way we look at both theories of consciousness and the objects of those theories both need to be broadened. And when you do them together, you have a combinatorial explosion that seems to leave you more uncertain than ever before. But I think that's a good thing.
Yes. Some of us enjoy it, other people don't, and that's respectable too. Let me add one more thing, because we spoke about data points of consciousness. Well, I forgot to mention the most important one, which is experience itself. Like if we're studying consciousness, and it depends on how we want to define it, but at the end of the day, we're trying to understand the feeling of being alive, or what it is like to be, or simply experience. So experience needs to be a very important datum of the study as well, not just the objective measurements we can make on the brain or the body or in the relationship with the world.